What's going on, everyone? So welcome to my latest video. This is part of a series where I focus on a specific composer and give you guys my top 10 scores from said composer. You clicked on the video, so you know it. This time around, I'm doing my top 10 favorite Carter Burwell film scores of all time. Now, keep in mind, this is as of the filming of this video, which in this case is March 16th of 2025. These are my top 10 favorite scores from this composer. And it goes also without saying that this is a subjective list, meaning that it is not objective. So mine's going to be different from yours. And that's what's great about film as an art form. So I'm looking forward to seeing what your top 10 Carter Burwell film scores are looking like in the comment section down below. But guys, enough exposition. Let's get started. So kicking things off, my number 10, we have To Catch a Killer. This is a film that I was very much so looking forward to given the cast as well as the story. But it's really the score that I think is the biggest selling point of this film because it's very moody and it matches the tone, the cinematography with ease. It's also a score that I think works on its own. Like I've listened to the score by itself several times. So there's that. So if you decide not to check out the film, I would highly recommend that if you're in the mood for a moody score, at the very least, check out the score for To Catch a Killer because it's quite good. And that's why I have it as my number 10. Next up, at number 9, we have Big Lebowski. So many people, including myself, say that scores from comedies usually are pretty forgettable. That's not the case with The Big Lebowski. It is definitely the exception to the rule because this is a score that sticks with you, especially the main theme song. So good. Don't get me wrong, the soundtrack is quite good as well, but it's really the main theme song of this film that sticks out the most. So I highly recommend you check out The Big Lebowski, but especially for the score by Carter Burwell. It's really good. So that was my number 9. Next up, my number 8, we have Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. This is a film that got a lot of Oscar attention, including a Best Original Score nomination for Carter Burwell. So should tell you about the quality of the score. But I'll add a little bit extra. I think what makes this score work so well is that it is so quick. It's so methodical also in regards to matching what the characters are thinking. And it's very emotional too at times. So I really like the score for this film, as you can tell, because it's on this list. But yeah, it really works. And I don't think the film would work nearly as well without Carter Burwell's score. So love this score. And that's why I have it as my number 8. Next up, at number 7, we have Adaptation. Adaptation is quite a film. It's very original, it's very zany, and it's also a great companion piece to Being John Malkovich. I think that one of the things that works the most about this film is the score. It immediately sets the tone for what is to be expected for the rest of the film, which is nothing. And by that, I mean that it is quite unpredictable. It is one of the most unpredictable films that you'll watch, which makes sense given that this is a companion piece to Being John Malkovich, which is also quite an unpredictable film. So I think that the score works really well, and I think especially during the narration-heavy scenes, the score really, comes to life, and it works really well. So I love the score for Adaptation, and that's why I have it as on this list. So that's my number 7. Next up, my number 6, we have The Banshees of Inisherin. This is a really, really good film, but again, similar to all these other scores with the films, this film would not work nearly as well if it wasn't for this score by Carter Burwell. It is so good. Some people might argue that it's repetitive. I would disagree because I do think that he does mix it up a bit, but that main theme song is just so good. As soon as I saw this film for the first time, I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be another one of those great Carter Burwell scores. And by the end, that was confirmed because I was like, yes, this is so good. I've listened to the score several times on its own. It's really good. So yeah, that's why I have this on my list as my number 6. Now we get to the nitty gritty. Top 5. So my number 5 is The Alamo, which is a 2004 film that really doesn't get talked about that much other than the fact that it's one of the biggest box office bombs of all time. But as many of you know, for myself, what a film makes at the box office doesn't dictate the quality of the film. And that's definitely the case with The Alamo because The Alamo itself is a very well-made film, but it's especially well-made because of the score. I dare anyone to watch this film and not say at the very least that the score is incredible. Especially the scene where Davy Crockett is playing as the sun is setting and you hear Carter Burwell's score swelling in. That is cinema. That scene especially, one of the best scenes of 2004. It is quite a film, but that scene especially would not work nearly as well if it wasn't for Carter Burwell's powerful score. Love, love, love the score, and yes, it's such an underappreciated score. Carter Burwell, amazing job with this score, and that's why I have The Alamo as my number 5. Hopefully this gets a 4K release. Fingers crossed. But that was my number 5. Next up, my number 4, we have Fargo. Oh yeah, you betcha. One of the most influential scores. And by that, I mean that this film ended up spawning a TV show. And guess what? That TV show, the main theme of that TV show is from the film. So, yeah, the main theme song alone is incredible. But what works really well are the smaller moments, the quieter moments between the characters. And you hear Carter Burwell's score, in the background. And it works really well with sending to audiences what the characters are feeling, whilst at the same time simultaneously acknowledging the fact that the performances tie in with the score really well. So I love the score for Fargo. It is quite a score, and yeah, that's why I have it as my number 4. Next up, my number 3, this is a score that unfortunately isn't really available. I mean, you can listen to it on YouTube, but in regards to like Apple Music and Prime Music, you really can't listen to it, unfortunately. And that's a shame because it's my number 3. My number 3 is Being John Malkovich. So I love the score. I especially love the main theme song, but it's really the ending. The score for the ending is something that just is so sad, but it is so beautiful at the same time. It's a weird mixture of feelings that the score does for me watching this film, because I think that this film is hilarious, but I do also think that it's tragic, and that ending in particular really hits home that. But it's really because of Carter Burwell's score, because it has that mixture of, comedy and just tragedy drama. So that is something that I can't emphasize enough how amazing it is that Carter Burwell gave us the score for this film. So if you haven't seen Being John Malkovich, I would highly recommend you check out the film. It's in my top 25 of all time. But the score especially deserves a listen. So even if you decide not to check out the film, at the very least, I would highly recommend you check out the score for this film. But yeah, Being John Malkovich is my number 3. Next up, my number 2, we have Carol. Carol is one of my favorite Christmas films. I think it is a fantastic film, and it would not, and I really have to emphasize this, it would not work nearly as well as it does if it wasn't for the score. The score immediately hits the soundscape, and when it does, I knew I was in for an incredible ride. I saw this film for the first time on Christmas of 2015, and I was left nearly to tears. Not only because of the acting and the filmmaking, but because of Carter Burwell's score. It is an emotionally devastating score. It's really, really good. And I haven't stopped thinking about the score since then. Nearly 10 years later. It's that good. So I was very happy that it got a, original score nomination at the Oscars. Very well deserved. And that's why I was my number 2. Next up, my number 1. This is the score that is what really brought this composer to my attention. Like, I didn't know who Carter Burwell was until I saw this film in theaters, and ever since I saw this film in theaters, I always was keeping an eye out for this composer. My number 1 is True Grit, which came out in 2010. Yeah, I think that this is one of the best scores of the 2010s. I think the scene in particular where it's towards the end of the film, it's 1 on 4. That's the track name, I believe. That score, that track in particular, amazing. But the score overall is just so tragic, but at the same time arousing. It's an interesting mix, and that's one of the things that I love about Carter Burwell, is that his scores always have a hint of emotional melancholy, whilst at the same time can be arousing at times. And I think that that's one of the powerful things about his scores. But what I really like about this score in particular is that it also does intertwine a lot of, old style soundtrack bits. And that's one of the reasons why, unfortunately, he wasn't eligible for getting a Best Original Score nomination in 2010. So on one hand, I'm glad that he added it because I think it does work to the film's benefit. But on the other hand, I do wish that he didn't in the very back of my mind, because I do think that this is one of the best scores of the 2010s. And that's why I have it as my number 1. I think this is a great, great score. So highly recommend checking out the film, but the score is perfect. But yeah, guys, that's my top 10 favorite Carter Burwell film scores. Let me know what yours looks like in the comment section down below. And as always, I appreciate you guys for watching. Don't forget to follow me on Letterboxd, Patreon, subscription, notification bell, and I will catch you guys later.